Hello, everybody. This is Varochon, the Peaceful Revolutionary. I wanted to talk about nanorobots today because that's always been very interesting to me, and it's been buzzing for about 20 years, mostly because of science fiction. Star Trek: The Next Generation, and a bunch of books in science fiction. It's always been kind of something that people were either scared about because nanorobots are obviously very, very small, so you can't see them coming. And they're kind of crawling everywhere. You don't even see them. And in some cases from science fiction, you have nanorobots that are self-replicating. So they can make more of themselves, a little bit like bacteria or viruses, which are like little nanorobots as well. And they can be problematic, as you know, when you get flu or cold or something more serious. So our nanorobots that we make, depending on who's making them and for what purpose, it can be either super cool or it can be super dangerous. Anyway, so science fiction has lots of different examples of dangerous and useful things. Now, in practicum, like as far as what we're doing today, we're still looking at and how to get them to work, and we're still kind of building the components of a useful nanorobot and a practical one, where we're still looking at, like, the first nanorobots likely would be more like a sensor. So it would be a very uninteresting shape, most likely, and then you can put it somewhere like in the liquid, like in the bloodstream or something like that, and it would probably be something more like a sensor. And if it senses something, a temperature change, for example, the temperature becomes too high, like you have a fever, for instance, then it releases some chemical that would calm you down. So fairly simple functionality. It's not a computer that looks like a little beetle and kind of runs around inside your body and does all sorts of construction, deconstruction, and all these complex tasks. Not the first ones, at the very least. In any case, for these functions to occur, you still need the nanorobot to be able to move around. The first ones may not need, if it's in the blood, for example, because the blood will flow and it kind of moves, with the blood, doesn't need to actually swim. But if you a little bit more complex, or another environments, maybe it needs to be able to swim around a little bit or walk around a little bit. So you need a mode of locomotion, and you need it to do something. And anything that needs to do something needs energy. So it needs a little battery or a little something to actually generate the energy it needs to do what it needs to do when it needs to be done. So these are components, a little motor, a little rotor. Maybe it needs memory, for example. Maybe it needs to carry electrical charges. Little pieces like that gives them their function, or be able to be functional, to have a function, depending on what the function is. And then moving on with more complex systems, we can add functionality to a nanorobot and other little pieces, little machinery to it, until we may get something that's fairly complex, that can do many things, or complicated tasks, or even have some form of rudimentary intelligence, animal or insect level intelligence with instinct to a certain degree. Or if you think a little bit farther ahead, even it could be an extension of a computer that's outside that is highly intelligent, and it gives it orders that it accomplishes through wireless and whatnot. So the bug itself, or the nanorobot itself, doesn't need to have like its own central computer, for example. It can just follow orders through a transmitter, right, and just do whatever it's told from the outside, or from our own brains, perhaps, whatever. You can imagine all sorts of scenarios. Anyway, here's what's really interesting, what's really going on. I've been looking through some of my files, and I've found some interesting advancements that have been released in the last few months. The first one, I can't find the file, unfortunately. I know I read it. I would like to provide you with the link, but I forgot where I put it. but it's a team of scientists. I believe in the Western world. I don't know. I don't remember where. What they were able to achieve was to create a not molecular, sorry, an atomic switch, like meant to mimic the behavior of a computer switch. Computer switch is something that either it has a 0 or a 1. So it's binary code, like as you know, computer language is zeros and ones. And the way it does it is that you have little switches that are either on or off. Like on is 1 and off is a 0, right? So they're able to actually do that. So but using they wanted to go really, really small. They're using a single calcium atom. It's about as small as you can get, like molecularly. I mean, it's a single atom, and it just changes the state of that calcium atom through vibration and temperature, essentially, to give it that clear signal between a 0 and 1 with electricity kind of involved. So we're getting there where we can get some atomic level components that are normally associated with computers and microchips and computing in general. So that's one part. Years ago, and that's not news. We've been able to use DNA as a memory storage device, and it's thousands, at the very least, thousands of times more efficient than the fastest, best memory storage device that we've ever invented, even today. And you can basically keep it forever at all sorts of temperatures, and it won't degrade or change. The DNA molecule is extremely stable, extremely compact, and it can keep using a binary system like GC, which is, these are the little ladders. If you've seen, a DNA, it's a guanine and cytosine, adenine and thymine. And A, T, and GC are tagged together, so it creates like a binary code. Potentially, it could be like a quaternary code, like a code with 0, 1, 2, 3. But in the experience we've been doing, since we're using ones and zeros most of the time for computers, they've been saying, say like AT is a 0 and GC matchup is a 1. So you got zeros and ones along a molecule. And then it stores the information. And we can synthesize DNA really easily, and we can read DNA really easily using a computer. It's not as fast as your own computer at this point, but you can store so much information for so much time it won't degrade like a hard drive. A hard drive you can keep for a number of years, but eventually it'll go bad. But DNA you can keep for 100 years in your basement, in a jar. It looks a little bit like it's going to look a little bit like Vaseline, like in a jar. If it's not, it's kind of viscous. And then after 100 years, you can start reading it again, and it'll still be fine unless it was exposed to extreme temperatures, for example. So it's really interesting. So we can use DNA for memory, and it's still being used and experimented on today. A fresh article that I've received recently talks about how a DNA can also be used as a diode. Essentially, a diode in electronics is used to make sure electricity is going to flow only a single direction. It's quite simple. So a DNA molecule associated with another molecule that is a little bit bigger. But the DNA molecule has 11 base pairs, so it's really, really small. And associated with this other molecule, I forgot the name of it. If I can just find it real quick. Okay, maybe I can't find it that quickly. I should have taken the note. But anyway, it's another molecule that has a specific name. It's attached to it. Both these things together act, and you can plug a circuit to it. And electricity is only going to be able to go through it in a certain direction, not the other direction. Okay, so this is a molecular device that is very stable, very easy to reproduce, and it can be used as a diode. So we got a switch, we got a diode, and we got a way to store memory forever in a tiny space. And that's pretty cool. What about the the box where we'd put all these things, or maybe the wafer where we'd put all these molecular transistors. Well, there's a team in Zurich. Okay, this is Germany. They were able to. They managed a way to create molecules that can be multiple components, multiple types of materials. That and each the molecules are literally microscopic. They are micrometers wide. That's 1,000th of a millimeter. Okay, so very, very small, and they're able to control the production of such molecules, and it can make basically any molecule of any shape using whatever material you want to make it with. So you can make like the capsule of your little nanorobot or whatever you want at that very, very small scale, fairly easily, using their technique once it gets more advanced to be inapplicable in the industry, for example, where you can actually do things, because everything you do in a very, very small scale, you can't use your hands. You can't use even robotic needles and pliers or anything like that, because it's literally everything is too big. Like the molecules are too big to handle the small things. So they're actually using solutions and waters and electromagnetic fields sometimes, and theories of attraction and repulsion between molecules to kind of set things in place, and different materials that have different properties to kind of make sure the molecules kind of do what they're supposed to be doing without them actually manipulating it. And it's a little bit like self-assembly. So lots of different techniques. And one of the articles that I'm putting down there actually explains why, even though we've been talking about it for years, why we haven't seen simple nanorobots in medical. And they explain it just takes such a long amount of time to create a small amount of material, because a lot of it has to be somewhat random to create something specific and to experiment and then test it. Because you can't just place two things using your fingers or tools and like that. You have to kind of use forces, and you kind of look at it as, okay, some of these molecules or these things that I created are behaving the right way, and they're set up the right way through somewhat guided placement using forces and solutions and magnets and whatever they have at their disposal to align these super small molecules that you can't manipulate with any tool whatsoever. But then you have to pick them up to identify those that work, that are that are properly set, and you have to be able to separate them from all those that are failures in this random mix that is semi-directed. And then you can do some tests with those materials. And as you do tests, sometimes you fail and you break some of them, and you have to you would do the process again, make some more, and try to find a way to filter them out so that you have the right ones. And it takes a long time. And then once you get that done and you're able to find a good process to make them consistently, where you don't have to pick out like 1 out of 1,000, you have a good method to actually make something, then you have to go through regulations like the FDA, for example, in the case of drug delivery, or nanorobots you'd put in the bloodstream, for example. Well, how are they going to approve it? Maybe usually they're going to ask, okay, well, you have to produce some, and you have to do experimentations more in the lab, and then you have to do it with the animals, then you have to do clinical trials with humans, and that's a process that takes 10 years. So they were saying in the article, and it's a little funny, during the time that we're able to make nano medicine, let's call it that, not necessarily nanorobot at this point, like to have 30 approved, and at the same time that they have 30 of those little types of medicines approved, there would be 700 of the regular medicines, like traditional medicines, approved by the FDA. And some of the problems there, because it takes so long and it's so meticulous works, and it takes such a long time to do things and so costly to do these little nano delivery systems that are nano machines in some way. Sometimes traditional medicines actually figures out a way to cure a problem before they find a more modern, more sexy way to do it. So it's we're still not there yet. We have exciting strides because of all the little pieces that are very important that we're building, and we're finding very valuable and constant way to build these little pieces. We're still working on that, but until we see an actual nano robot that we can, like, for us, we would call it that actually functions, perhaps moves and does something significant, that we think, okay, this is definitely a nanorobot, it may take a number of years still, unfortunately. But I mean, check out the links I posted below. We're doing well. It's really exciting. We're doing components at the molecular level, at the atomic level, which is just about as small as you want or can get for dealing with atoms and molecules, because you have the same size at what you're going to be manipulating. And just to give you some ideas of what could be done with that, like we're talking a bit about the medical aspects, but also once you have the first nanorobots that can construct or replicate themselves as well, or construct something out of atoms, for example, the whole economy for sure is going to collapse, because then everybody could essentially program their own nanorobots and build anything they want, repair anything they want, including their own diseases, very, very easily at that point. Because if you can manipulate molecules and atoms pretty much freely using little mechanical robots that can directly manipulate and do things in exactly the right locations and spots where you need it, then essentially you can do anything with materials around you, including your body. And but that's a little bit far, still a ways out. But just like everything else, technology advances are surprisingly fast sometimes, the way it works. So keep an eye for it. I certainly will. In the meantime, well, I think that's going to be it for this update. I hope you're excited, just like I am, about nanorobotics and where we're headed. These small little pieces that we're making are duplicates of mechanical computers, essentially. This is very exciting. It's not only for nanorobots themselves, but also organic computing, for example, which I do believe I mentioned. You can have computers that are much smaller, much lighter, much more regular and safer, and using organic molecules. And you can have computers that are like the size of the tips of your finger, that are probably that are more powerful than all the computers that are on the planet at the same time. And this is probably going to happen before we start inserting intelligent nanobots inside our bloodstream, in my opinion, because of, again, regulations and FDAs and things like that. They'll accept something organic that you can put on your desktop way before the people will accept, and the FDA will accept something you put in your bloodstream. You'll agree with that, I'm sure. So have a good time. Enjoy checking out the science and keeping up to date. The world is changing. Science frees us and gives us tools to create a peaceful revolution, to make things better for everybody without depending on infrastructures and big corporations, governments. We can do it. We just need everybody that has skills and talents, including the scientists and the engineers that are making these nice discoveries and this really cool research. Ciao for now. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you next time.